Good morning. Today I'm speaking with Nicola Huelin, and I'm delighted to be speaking with Nicola in particular because she is a massive source of inspiration for me, has always been and will always be. She's a mentor. She has mentored me and I've learned so much with her. But also I think, for me, Nicola is the person who really leads from the heart. So that's why she's such an inspiration. She's a lady who is on a mission to empower women, and has a business called Mpower. She'll introduce herself in a minute, much better than I can do justice to her presentation. But very warm welcome, Nicola. I'm excited to be speaking with you today.
Thank you, Fabienne. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for, that very touching introduction. And I feel honoured to be part of your journey and working with you. It's it's all about teamwork, and really excited to be part of your journey and part of this podcast today. Thanks for the invite.
Yes. So, for me, it's extra special that you're on it because you've helped me, get to this and to sort of like starting thinking and developing activities and, what I want to do to make education a wonderful place for everybody, so everybody can flourish. So Nicola, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit more about you? So, who you are, where you're based. So I've said, you're obviously an entrepreneur, a creator of Mpower. Do you want to tell people a bit more about you?
Yeah, love to. So obviously based in the UK, in Cheshire, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by lots of fields. I live with my life partner, Graham, and between us we've got 4 children. They're on the slightly, we're going to be talking lots, aren't we, about what it means to be a parent and a mum and work-life balance. So I guess I can talk from a place of having lived through that different spectrum, the different family chapters, and ours are older now. We've got 4 children, 26, 2 who are 22, and a 17-year-old. And I can vouch for the fact that it is a myth that they don't need us anymore when they get beyond a certain age. They just need us in a different way. Every chapter is wonderful. So yes, 4 children, and I am on a mission to empower others. And just to put that in context, I guess, under this umbrella of empowering others, and I believe, coaching for me plays a big part in that. I believe that coaching has the power to change the world. And under that umbrella, there's kind of 3 strands to what I do. There's Mpower that you've mentioned already, which is all about, I'm a business geek. So the business coaching and mentoring specifically for mums in business. So those women who have taken on that incredible challenge of both raising a family and building a business at the same time. Incredible challenge, adventure, roller coaster ride, and I'm sure we'll touch on that more. So that's strand 1. Strand 2, it was always really important for me to kind of work both sides of the fence. And whilst Mpower is, probably the larger proportion, I do work with empowering women in the corporate workplace as well. I've developed the Women's Impact Program, so it's working with them so that they can make their big impact in their career in the way that's right for them. And work-life balance features, as you can imagine, very heavily. There's 7 pillars of impact. Work-life balance is one of them. Resiliency is another. So I'm really passionate about that because I was once a career committed woman and mother. When I was in business consultancy, I'd already had my daughter when I went back to work for another 6 years. I did that, loved my career. And not everybody is meant or wants to be an entrepreneur. So it felt very important to me to be empowering women in both of those paths, because there's no right or wrong. It's just about what is right for the individual. And then I have a third strand, I guess, which has kind of been born out of Mpower. I found that a lot of my one-to-one clients that I was business coaching and mentoring were coaches like me, and were coming to me going, how do you do what you do? I want to do that too. And so they came and worked with me, and they're probably sort of 95% of my client base now. And so I identify with, and my name for that group are conscious coachpreneurs. I believe that as coaches, we go through 3 stages. You know, we qualify and we're a coach, and then we have to get to grips with the business stuff. So we become a coachpreneur in order to be able to turn our coaching into a sustainable and impactful coaching business. And then conscious coachpreneur, because my passion is really working with the coaches that are purpose driven and really want to make a difference in the world.
Wonderful. So yeah, just amazing to sort of like for people to see which brand or which branch of your work they might resonate with, and obviously we'll put all your details, you know, how to contact you in the blurb for the podcast, so people can easily get in touch with you if they want to, which I'm sure they will. So tell me then, Nicola, we were talking about the work-life balance and being a mum and being a coach and sort of managing both. And I guess that what really drew me to the work you do and you know, to see you as an inspiration is really you to me, from looking from the outside in, you seem to be unlike a lot of people that I've seen, in a sense that you drive what you do through your passion. So what you obviously clearly understand what you're passionate about, but it's not about that success as in, you know, earning loads of money and, you know, 6-figure sort of businesses. It's very much, you know, leading, as I said previously at the beginning, from the heart, in terms of, you know, finding what we love doing and then, you know, building it as a, you know, being of service to others. So am I right in thinking this is what I'm seeing? Or, I mean, is that a right reflection of what I'm seeing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's interesting, isn't it? I think the word, let's take that word success. I use it a lot in my my copy. It's on my website. You know, I use the word success. And I remember when I first started out, there was one particular lady who's a copywriter, great marketer, and she said to me, you know, you're using the word success a lot. It's quite a masculine word. I'm not sure if that's really you. But I wanted to keep that word because it's a word that everybody identifies with, but in different ways. And that's the point I make, or you know, when I'm having conversations or when I'm giving a talk, or, you know, in my book, I write about it. Success means different things for different people. And there is no right or wrong. And for me, that's really important. And you're right. For me, success in business means being able to follow my calling and do what I feel I'm really here to do, and to make a difference, and to show up authentically in my business and to serve others, to really bring them the support and the know-how and the encouragement and that blend of things that they need in a way that's right for them. And because it's not either or, and revenue, income, money, financial security, financial freedom is a facet of success. You know, not everybody, not all of my clients want to start. It's more than a hobby. You know, they're not all charities. They're not all not-for-profit organisations. You know, so it's whilst I don't lead with you know, the money angle, because for me, when you're on purpose, when you're doing the thing you love, when you're really showing up 100%, particularly when you're in the professional services industry, I'm not talking about selling products is slightly different. When you're showing up as you of service, professional services, when you lead with the I'm here to help other people solve their problems and I'm here to serve, the money follows. The money is like a byproduct. And I often use the analogy of a car and an engine. You know, when we look at buying a car, you know, if the engine is the impact and the power that we're bringing to the world and to others, you know, the engine is the important bit, and that's the kind of what we do. But money is the oil in that engine, and it is important, you know, otherwise things grind to a halt. It's just not sustainable. And money is a good thing. I have a very healthy relationship with money. I have no problem charging for what I do. I understand the value of what I do to my clients, and that's, you know, that's been a journey as well over time. I've been doing what I do for full time for 8 years, and but I don't lead with the whole 7-figure global empire overnight. That's not everybody's definition of success. So I talk about making a great living. You know, and when I work with my clients, I always ask them, what does your vision look like? What's the business and life that you want to have? Because it's not about how I define success, it's about how each of us define success, and that's going to look different for each and every one of us.
So do you, that's perfect, and that's exactly how I've always viewed how you do things, and I've experienced it, you know, personally anyway. So imagine we've got some of our listeners who are you know, listening to this conversation, and a lot of us, I mean, certainly that was true for me until very recently. We are taught from a young age that you just gotta, you know, get the degree or get the qualification, and then get the job, and then, you know, get the next job, and then buy the house, and, you know, so almost like getting on this treadmill, or on the, you know, treadmill, like a little mouse, you know, that ball just sort of keep going and keep going. And if I, as a person, I feel like I'm on that treadmill, and I'm sort of like, it's daily grind, and I'm not quite sure I'm enjoying life, and, you know, because I'm juggling being a mom and a full-time job, or, you know, trying to have a part-time job and have a career, because some women have, unlike like myself, may have chosen to focus on their children and not to keep their career like I did. So what would be the first bit of advice you would give these women to get them to start, you know, them thinking about, you know, how to do things differently?
It's a really good question, and I've totally been there. You know, I've totally been there. I had a career. I was in the corporate world, and I loved it, and it was great. until a certain point. You know, life evolves, things change, and what works for one chapter of our life doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the best thing forever. And change is not always easy. Change is not always comfortable, and it takes a great deal of courage to be able to admit or recognize oneself first and foremost, this is not working for me anymore. Because especially if we are strong and we're resilient and we've always, you know, done the right thing, and then it can be like we can worry that we're giving up on something good. And especially you know, in the current climate, you know, we're in lockdown at the moment, aren't we? And there's a lot of uncertainty and financial uncertainty. But even in the best of times, you know, when you've got a good job, or you've got a job, you know, and it's not working, people can think, oh, I should just be grateful for what I've got, and isn't that a bit selfish to want more or to be unhappy with my lot? But there are all sorts of reasons why you can reach a point where it just doesn't work anymore. And, you know, for me, I think there are, in this pool of life, if we imagine this one big swimming pool, there are these different lanes that we can be in. You know, we can be, and so I'm gonna say, as a parent, as a mother, because I'm a mum, but actually this could be guys too, if you're a primary caregiver. I'm talking, you know, when you're the primary caregiver for children, it's important to make sure you're in the right lane, because the first lane of the three is full-time homemaker. I've done that for a time as well. Hats off to women who do that long term, because it is a full-time, very, very hard job, you know.
I agree totally.
Like,
and I really admire women who have chosen to do that, because
yeah,
I honestly did not have the courage to do that. So I have loads of masses of admiration for women who have chosen their dedicated their life and all their time to their children. I admire them greatly.
Absolutely. Imagine seeing a job advert, right? So you open the ad section in the newspaper, you see this job, and it kind of goes, you know, lead role, loads of responsibility. So it's actually it's 24/7, 365. There's no sick pay, no benefits, no holidays, no scope for promotion, no pension. And there's no pay. I mean, who would apply for that? And yet,
Nobody.
you know, who would apply? And yet there's billions of us all over the world putting our heart and soul into that job. And obviously the job is being a mum, being a primary caregiver. It's a huge job. So, and actually Bidvine did some research in 2017, and they looked at all the things that a full-time primary homemaker caregiver does, and they looked at the value of that, like if it were a salaried job. And this is back in 2017, they said it would equate to an £80,000 a year salary. Of value. That's our value as a full-time homemaker.
Wow. Awesome. And that is good. So, I think this is so important in this conversation, that we get caregivers, be it mums or dad, doesn't matter, that they really hear that message. Because I think currently with COVID-19, there's so much challenge around you know, being all the conversations I have with people, you know, so if you come to me and say I'm feeling stressed, it's about being everything to everyone and feeling that you are failing miserably at all of it. So I've had that experience when we first went into lockdown, because we had to go in lockdown earlier than everybody else because Tom got sent home with a cough from school. So that was it. That was us self-isolating for 12 days before even the lockdown started. And I was trying to be this perfect mother who was also perfect language director, trying also to create podcasts and do the things that I love for flourishing education. And I got to a stage where I was like, I cannot do this. I can't, because I'm trying to be this perfection, whatever that means, for my kids, and failing because I was just like losing my rag with them because I was trying to homeschool them. And I'm a teacher, but actually I'm not. My role is not to educate them and teach them, because I'm not a primary school teacher or, a secondary school teacher that covers all of the topics. So I think, in this conversation, this notion that as a caregiver, we should be everything to everyone. And then sometimes we just feel that we do it really poorly and badly, and that generates a lot of blame and negativity in our lives. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a tremendous amount of pressure, and I think part of that pressure, because that's just the pure homemaker role, 80k of value we're delivering. I think the problem is, in the Western world, the role of parenting, the responsibility and the amount of work it brings is hugely underestimated and undervalued, not by everybody, but I think it is, we forget the value. And so it's almost, well, there's only value if we're doing all of that, and we're sticking a career on top and alongside. That's lane 2 or lane 3, or I'm building a business on the side. And some people are doing all three. They're homemaking, they're in a full-time job, and they want to transition out, so they're building a business on the side as well. And it's an incredible amount of pressure and work to take on. It is doable, but that's where doing it in the right way and having the right support becomes vital, because otherwise we just end up either it's not sustainable, but burn ourselves out. And I've been there too. When I first left the corporate world, I thought, I've got what it takes. I've got the business qualifications tick, experience tick, and jumped into what should have been this idyllic family business, so we can have that balance and flexibility, a better family lifestyle. And within 2 years, I was pretty much emotionally, physically, and mentally burnt out. And we sold that business, and really out of that, it was a horrific time, because those 2 years, it wasn't yes, okay, the business made good money. It was probably one of the most profitable businesses. It was hard work. We made a lot of money. And you could say, well, the business did really well on paper, Nick, but actually the cost, the personal cost, because my children were young, my son was 4 months old, so it was those first 2 years of his life, and they're years I can never get back. I can't get that piece of our, me being his mother at that young age. I can't get them back, and it came at a very high personal cost. Now, out of that terrible time, it's the only time of my life I regret and would not do. But every cloud has a silver lining, because that became the catalyst for my quest. I continue to have different online and offline businesses for another 10 years, with this quest of, it must be possible to be successful in business without having to compromise my personal and family life and my health and my sanity in the process. It has to be possible. And it's at the very core of why I business coach and mentor in the way that I do, because I hope it's okay just to just one more thing to say. I've been to talks by business gurus and experts who are amazing at what they do, and they have been sat in crowds of 100, in multiple hundreds in London, because people want to learn their secrets of how did they become so successful. And I remember sitting in one talk and I was listening to this guy, and his success was amazing, and it's like, okay, now, and what's the secret? How did he do it? And he said, well, I started off, I had a girlfriend. Well, I had to get rid of her because I didn't have time for a relationship. And if you want to do, I had to hustle 24/7. It was my whole life. And for 4 years, I did nothing else. And I was like, that doesn't work for me. I can't just go, okay, kids, right. I want a really successful business, so I'm just going to have to put you guys on pause for 4 years. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So whilst there are certain strategies for being successful in business, that will only work for a certain percentage of the population who don't have responsibilities for other human lives. They're not just physically dependent on us. It's not just give them some food and stick them in the corner. They're also emotionally dependent on us for their welfare too. So yeah, how did we get there? So for me,
are we talking about like being in the lanes and the swimming pool and what advice you would give a woman who's or a man, anybody who's sort of thinking, I'm not quite sure this is right for me, and what's the next step?
So there's two parts. So somebody who it's firstly becoming aware and giving yourself permission to recognize, okay, my life as it is and my work, this is not working for me. I want something different. To recognize that, to understand there are all these different options. That's really exciting. To recognize to recognize if you feel scared about changing, that's completely normal, because it takes great courage to change and to take that first step, that leap of faith. Often other people will think you're crazy. They did in my case. I left a corporate career with a good job, and I had people tell me to my face, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? You've got a good job. You've done all these studies. You've worked so hard. You've got all these prospects. But I knew if I wanted to continue feeling as successful on the inside as I appeared successful on the outside, I needed to follow the path that was right for me. And the other bit of advice is then, when you figure out what that path looks like, is to find the way of living that path day by day in a way that's right for you. Don't get sucked into, do it this way because the gurus and experts are saying that's what it takes and that's what worked for them, because everybody's context, life situation is different. So it's then about finding the way that is right for you and have your own measures of success. Don't fall into the trap of feeling you have to achieve the same goals at the same pace. Everyone's on a different journey and you can't compare. Some people are 5 years up the mountain ahead of us and we're just starting, and don't fall into the trap of comparing would also be my advice.
So that's amazing, because that leads to two questions I was going to ask you. Perfect. The first one is, you were talking about when we go and see these people and we look at people telling us how to do things, like this person, with all of the 200 people or hundreds of people in this room trying to find that one size fits all. That's one thing that I've really noticed. It's also true, with education. People always say to me, what's going on with young people? Can you tell me the one thing that as a parent I can change that will make a difference for my child? And I always say, I think in our society, the one thing that we possibly are not understanding is that, just like you were saying, we're all unique individuals on our own journey through life. And I don't think we're told enough that there's no magic wand, no one size fits all. That just means that it's about us as individuals finding what makes us tick, what matters to us, and how we want to plan and live life. So, you know I could never have been a full-time mum. I'm just far too driven and just want to do things, and that's who I am as an individual, and I don't think I'll ever change. Until I die, I'll be this curious person who's constantly thirsty for more, learning more things. But I know that I have friends who have chosen to be full-time mums, and they love it. They love being with their kids. And I think part of the issue is if we start saying to people, this is how that's the model you need to follow, and this is how it has to unfold, then that makes us even more inadequate, because it's like, well, actually, maybe that doesn't quite fit in with me. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I do. And as you were describing that, the image that was coming up in my head is literally an image. It's like when we're born, the image that comes to me is like life is like this blank canvas, and we each have this opportunity to create our own life masterpiece, which isn't easy, starting from a blank canvas. And I think through learning, whether we're talking about life in general, or through the education system, or through business coaching and mentoring, of course there are frameworks and models and tools and techniques and know-how that we can learn that can help us, that kind of put tools in our toolkit. So if we're the artist of our life, that gives us all this wonderful array of materials to choose from. Oh, am I going to do acrylics or watercolor or pencil or biro or collage, so we can choose different approaches. And I think the important thing is to be empowered or taught or encouraged to go, do you know what your life can be? It can look like anything you want it to look like. And it doesn't have to be this paint by numbers, going back to what you said right at the beginning. Oh, here's your paint by numbers. You do this, you go here, you do your degree, you have your car, your house, your 2.2 kids, then you do this, then you do that. Life's not a paint by numbers. It can be anything you want to be, but that can feel very scary, the not knowing. And it also doesn't work to copy somebody else's masterpiece. We can look at somebody else's life and go, but we can take inspiration and go, wow, I love that about that person or their life, and we can emulate and draw inspiration from that into crafting our own masterpiece. But to take somebody else's exact copy of their life and try to copy it and use the same tools and techniques when perhaps they don't play to our strengths, our natural strengths, and the whole process of doing it will be very unfulfilling, very difficult. And what do we end up with? A copy of a masterpiece. And we all know, in the art world, what is that worth? What's the value of a copy print? Nothing compared to an original masterpiece. And I guess that's the metaphor that comes up for me at the end of the day, is that we all have the power and the opportunity, particularly in today's world, to make our life whatever masterpiece we want it to be. It doesn't mean it's easy.
No. That's
but it's
so beautiful. And that fits in so well also with the other metaphor that I've been using. So recently with my students who are experiencing some of the challenges of being under lockdown and having to do assignments, I've been using the analogy of, life is a little bit like surfing a wave. And what I use with that is the notion that comparing ourselves to the other surfers in the water. So actually, when we surf a wave, you'll spend probably 60 seconds actually surfing the wave. So the one bit that you really, really want to do and that you enjoy, that sort of surfing the wave, also involves being under the water and holding your breath, paddling under the wave. And the problem is that if we look at all the other surfers in the water around us, looking not only at like they're surfing it much better because of their technique and the way they look, but also, which is what you were saying, sort of trying to copy and emulate what they're doing, but also not realizing that actually where I am in the wave of life means that I might be under the water right now, but I'll be bobbing back up and surfing that wave when that person might be under the water. And the issue with constantly comparing myself with people around me and looking at, like you were saying, looking at the canvas of their life, the wave, and going, oh, it's so much better than mine, is that it's a complete delusion. We don't understand that we're all navigating and getting with the flow of life, the ebb and flow of life, very differently. And that also prevents what you were talking about before, and I'd love you to say more about that, because I think you emulate that for me. This is why you are a source of inspiration, is that authenticity, being a surfer and surfing the wave in my own style and my own way. So being an individual with an individual life, living my own experience and experiencing my own challenges. So could you talk to that, in terms of authenticity and how as individuals we can be more authentic?
Yeah, thank you. Authenticity is it's quite a buzzword, isn't it, these days, particularly I don't know about in the world of education, but certainly in the world of coaching and entrepreneurship, we talk a lot about authenticity, because it's so crucial. Even my partner Graham is a leadership expert, and he talks a lot about the importance of authenticity in leadership for today's world. It's so important. And I remember when I first kind of heard it, after I'd qualified in coaching probably about 8 years ago, and thinking, authentic, well, it can sound quite trivial, can't it? It's like, well, what is authenticity? Being yourself. Well, I am myself. How can I be anything but myself? And it you kind of think, is there a catch to this? What how difficult can it be to be yourself? But actually, when you peel the layers off, it is really challenging, because we begin to see how we can be influenced by society and culture and family and friends and expectations, the shoulds, well, I'd love to do that, but, and I should do this. And I remember when I first came out of the corporate world into entrepreneurship, and the whole authenticity thing really did hit home, because I think when you work in an organization, there is an organizational culture, there is a way of doing things, there is a lingo, there are processes and procedures that they need to function, right? And you have your job description, and that people have a certain way of dressing, and then you step away from that, and it's like, oh, okay, so and you can either take some of that with you and keep trying it on, but actually it's very hard to thrive as a business owner until you know who you are as a business owner and can show up as you as a business owner. And it's like, well, what do I say now? And I can remember, because when I first started and as an entrepreneur, this is showing how old I am. There was there was no social media at all. There was
there was no internet, and no, this is all new.
No, we had like
it shows
dial up AOL had just started. You know, when you remember the noise it would make, and it would take forever to dial up, and so there was no social media at all. So in a way, I hadn't hit that authenticity barrier early on, but as social media came around, and you have this opportunity to show up and share your message and share content, and you don't have to wait to get your 15 minutes of fame on TV anymore. You've got your own platform, global platform. And I remember thinking, oh, well, who can I quote? Who's out there saying really good stuff? And I remember just like doing research to find out what stuff is out there that I can share. It never dawned on me, actually, that anybody would be interested in my personal journey or my personal story or my beliefs or my thoughts. And I had a very academic background, so I did a degree and I did postgrad qualifications in business as well. And I remember that in my postgrad, I didn't get a distinction. I was like a couple of percent off. And the reason for that, I was very passionate about my subject. And the reason was I hadn't quoted enough references to other people's stuff. I think that stuck with me. It's like, oh, you're not as good as you hope to be or could be unless you're referencing other people's historical research and stats. Yeah. That stuck with me for a long time. In fact, I remember
story of my life.
Yeah. It's really impactful, isn't it? And I remember, so I'm a published author. I've published a book, and I remember when I was offered the publishing deal, and I came and on Friday I said to Graham, I've been offered a publishing deal. It's amazing. We went out and celebrated, drunk champagne all weekend, and I woke up on Monday going, oh, okay, now I've actually got to write a book. And about 3 months later, Graham knocked at my office door and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm working on my book. He said, how's it coming along? I said, I haven't started it yet. He said, well, what are you doing? It's been 3 months. I said, I'm researching. What are you researching? I said, well, I'm trying to research, the stuff for my book. And he said, but why are you doing that? I said, well, I've got to have all that research to back up my book. And he said, but babe, you know your stuff better than anybody. You've lived and breathed this. It's who you are. It's your journey. It's what you do. You've been doing this for 8 years with hundreds of people. You don't need other people's research. And it wasn't until that conversation I was like, oh yeah, okay. And it completely flipped it on its head, and the floodgates opened, and I gave myself permission to write from me.
Yes,
it was just bizarre.
Yes. And I think so we had this is how we met, right? Because we did the Alison's sort of challenge together.
Yeah
Proposal, and got the publishing offer together at the same time. So in fact, both our books were published roughly, the first book, so we're published at the same time, and just like you, I had, and I think this is something that would be, I'd love to see your view on that particular point. When I first started writing, something that for me has been ever present in my journey, and I guess this is part of the reason I'm doing this work, is all around imposter syndrome and not feeling good enough. Okay, and I used to not talk about this, but now I'm actually very, very keen to talk about it, because I think it's important, because we all have imposter syndrome. And I remember sitting down to write the first book. I wrote 20,000 words, and then I pressed delete. I think, yeah, 10, maybe not 20,000, maybe 10,000 words. And then I just literally pressed delete. And I wrote to Alison and I said, I can't do this. I can't do it. And you know, luckily for me, Alison went, you'll find that you signed the contract that says you need to give me this. I like it, thank you. So,
well done, Alison.
Yes. So in a way, I was pushed to publish this book, but you know, I'm really keen to, with authenticity, and Brené Brown, you know, talking about quoting people, right? So Brené Brown, who does the work around vulnerability and, you know, shame, all of those things, she talks very much about, if you want to be authentic, it takes courage to talk about, you know, to admit, you know, what you love, and, you know, and also to just be you without worrying about how others are going to receive you, etc. And that takes an awful lot of courage, a lot of, you know, it's taken working with you and all of the work, the self-development, for me to be the person I am right now, you know, age 45, to be able to do this podcast and put it out there and just share. So, you know, do you want to talk about that, about the sort of like the imposter syndrome, the vulnerability, and what role they play for us as you know, as women, but also you know, men have it, maybe less than women. I think women are is a big thing for women. So do you want to give me your take on that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the word vulnerability, because it's a huge piece of authenticity. Kind of the two go hand in hand. I mean, if authenticity is about being true, being real, then being able to show up 100% as who we really are, that includes our imperfections, and it links back into what we were saying before about this pressure, often to want to strive to be perfect at everything, be everything to everybody and get it right all of the time. And so I think that there's so many facets of life that are interrelated, you know, authenticity, vulnerability, that whole having a growth mindset, being okay to make mistakes, you know, whether that's in our personal life or even within organizations, you know, organizations, you know, and young people coming out of the academic world where it's all been about, you've got to get it bang on, you've got to get it right to get the marks, to get the grade, to get the degree. And then when you go out into the real world, actually the world is so fast paced that we need innovation and creativity and new ways of working, and that evolve all the time. And we can only achieve those things if we're prepared not to get it perfect and right 100% of the time. So I think that's one aspect, and also the importance of vulnerability from a, you know, if we, and I'm sure the young people feel this more than we do, even, that the pressures of social media, you know, the filtered lives, the Insta lives, the smoke and mirrors around everything's perfect and glam and photoshopped and filtered within an inch of its life. And so I think that vulnerability to show up through our, not even imperfections, through, I want to use the word, through our realness, becomes even more important. because of otherwise the pressures that puts on people. And I'm not saying that it's not about everybody feeling exposed and exposing their wounds to the world, or exposing their private life, or making themselves feel vulnerable at a time when they're perhaps experiencing adversity and need that privacy and need to cocoon. It's not about that. But there's an expression that says, speak from the scar, not from the wound. And I love that, because what that's saying is actually being able to be vulnerable and share, I've been through adversity, I've experienced this, my life hasn't been perfect, I had this challenge, or I faced this difficulty, I went through X, Y, and Z, is really important, because when we're in it, when we have come out the other side and we can speak from the scar, it helps to show other people that they're not alone in what they're going through, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And otherwise it's all too easy to look at people and go, oh, they're there and look what they've achieved and they've done it all perfectly. And to hear somebody that we perhaps admire and hold as a role model, hear them talk about the challenges they've been through, and do so, they're doing that with courage, say, look, I'm not perfect, my life hasn't been perfect, this is what I've faced, can be such a source of hope and inspiration for others that are going through adversity. So I think authenticity is not just, I think it's very empowering for other people. It's not just about what it does for us as individuals, it's about how it also helps those who come into contact with our stories and messages.
You know what? I think you have just explained what I described at the beginning of this podcast. So that talking from the scar, not the wound, is, I guess, what I saw. When I describe you as a leader, from the heart, I think.
And I want to, just want to credit Danny Wallace with that. I'm in a PR group, and that talking from the scar, not the wound, she is she helps people with public speaking, and she was doing a live, she's doing a charity initiative to raise money to go towards domestic violence cause, which is amazing. And I must credit her, she said it and it really stuck with me. It's like, yes, that's exactly it. Cheryl Richardson had said something, she's a Hay House author, and about 5 years ago I'd heard her say something very similar, and that had stuck with me. And I think it's a really useful expression.
It's very powerful, and it's understanding that we all human, and we all suffering. And I interviewed 2 weeks ago a colleague who is introducing compassion in education, and last week I interviewed my mindfulness teacher. We hadn't spoken for 6 years, and we had an almost 2-hour conversation that I'm going to put live. Wow. Today or over the weekend. So it's a long conversation, and people will have to prepare themselves with a big mug of coffee. Or chunk it down, because I can't quite cut it in a way that works. So I'm going to put it out there completely. But I think this is what I saw in you, and this is why I see you as an inspiration, a little bit like Jacinda, like the New Zealand president. I would put you in that category of people who have, because of our experiences and because of our suffering, we can be compassionate. We recognize that there's, that as human beings we all suffer, and we all surf the wave differently, and the ebb and flow of life makes it that some of us might be completely, surfing the wave and happy, and others are under the water and really struggling. And it's that being compassionate and being a compassionate leader, because compassion is about your vagal nerve and your heart. It's about your parasympathetic nervous system, and you know, being able to give, and you know, that's what I think you do beautifully.
Oh, thank you, and to have my name even mentioned in the same sentence as New Zealand Prime Minister, I think she's absolutely amazing. So I'm thank you. That's made my year. Do you know, it's interesting. If we come back to our word of success where we start in, you know, what is this thing called success? And as I explained to you, you know, my first step into entrepreneurship was awful, really awful, a really difficult time, and I explained that really that was the catalyst for this quest of what does it take. And to summarize, I believe that there are 3 key ingredients that as human beings we all need in order to succeed on this path, on the, you know, working path or business path. You know, how do we combine that with having a great quality of life as well? How do we create our vision of success? And I think there's 3 core ingredients, and I just want to share that formula because it links into what we've been saying, kind of pulls it together. The first of those 3 ingredients is what I call the IQ. You know, we need know-how, and that's great, you know, whether we're academics learning our trade or learning our subject matter, whether we're in the corporate workplace learning our skills and industry experience, whether we're an entrepreneur and we're getting business mentoring or doing our training and learning as we go along. And so we need the know-how. Like the artist, we need our tools in our toolbox, and tools and techniques. Okay, so we need IQ, of course. Some of that we will learn academically, some of it University of Life will teach us as we go along. We might work with mentors and different experts. We need IQ. Secondly, we need EQ. We need that emotional intelligence. And obviously over the last 10 years, the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace, within education, you know, as human beings, we understand that now. And I think, you know, I look at this from a coaching perspective. Anybody else out there listening who is a coach or interested in coaching, it's great news for coaches, because through our training and our experience in the work we do, that's a big part of working and understanding emotions. And it's great when it comes to marketing, because emotional intelligence, that ability to empathize and to put yourself in your client's shoes, enter the conversation that's in their head, it gives you a head start in the marketing department for sure. And then there's this third, which ties in with everything we've just been talking about. So we've got IQ and we've got EQ. It's not enough to succeed in today's world. We also need what I've coined AQ. And that AQ is the authenticity and awareness piece. It's, who am I? What am I, you know, what's my purpose? What's my calling? What are my values? What are my natural strengths? That awareness of self, and that higher awareness, depending on, you know, how you want to look at it and your belief system. You know, what's my higher purpose, and feeling connected to what we feel called to do. And AQ, so AQ is that combination of awareness and then authenticity, to really show up truly as what we're here to do, and have the courage to do that. And that involves stepping out of comfort zones, and our own and other people's expectations a lot of the time as well. So IQ, EQ, AQ is what I believe it takes to succeed, no matter what your definition of success looks like.
That is just perfect. And I think that's where I would like to leave it, because it's such a powerful way to end this conversation, if you're okay with that. I think it's just a beautiful round circle to everything we've been talking about. So thank you so much, Nick, for your time today. As always, I could talk to you forever and ever. It's just
Same.
It's just so lovely. So it's a meeting for me. You know, when I met you, it was really a meeting of hearts. That's how it felt, and I really hope that our listeners will hear that in our conversation, because that's how I feel about you, and I feel very privileged to have met you, and to have your knowledge in my life. So thank you. Before we finish, I always ask my podcast guests to leave our listeners with maybe one thing they might want them to ponder about or think about, or wrap up for the conversation. Obviously your three IQ, EQ and AQ were very powerful. Is there anything else you want to add to finish?
Well, being a coach, I have to leave with a question, I guess. Just leave people with a question. So given the topic of today's conversation and where it's taken us, firstly, I want to say thank you to you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk with you today. Thank you to everybody who's been listening and tuned into this recording. And for those listening, I'd love to leave you with a question. We've spoken a lot today about this thing called success and what it might look like and the different metaphors. And so my last, the simple question to end on is, what does success look like for you?
Wonderful. And what a question. And then when people know, they can reach out to you and see if they want to explore that more, like I did.
Good pleasure.
Yeah, and I'll give them, I'll put all of your details when I share next week. I just want to thank you again. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to have you today. And I'm sure we might have, that might actually get you to come back in and talk about more specifically about the IQ, EQ and AQ and all of those things. And, some of the program you do, that'd be wonderful.
Awesome. Would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.